Well, it's the appointed hour, and we will call to order the June meeting of the MAF3 Citizens Advisory Board. You have been furnished with copies of the minutes of our previous meeting on May the 23rd. Are there additions or corrections to those meetings, to those minutes? Been moved that we approve the minutes. Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye, please. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. David, item 3, the MAF3 Revenue and Expenditure Report, please. Thank you, Mr.
Chairman. You have in your packet the MAF3 Revenue and Expenditure Report for the period ending April 30th, 2013. On the revenue side, you can see that for the month, there was $8,080,857. For the fiscal year, $87,507,412. For total program, $291,672,882. On the expenditure side for the month, $2,095,304. On the fiscal years, $12,996,976. And for the total program on expenditures, $25,864,316. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Michael, you have a question?
I don't have any questions. I did notice the minutes from the last meeting indicated something about adding a column to the report.
What we added was actually a number in that total column of the percent target on the total program, that 4.7%.
Okay. Very good. Move approval.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the revenue and expense report for the year. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The revenue and expenditure report is received. Want to announce we're making one change in the agenda. We're changing an item. Item number 6 on your agenda is going to be considered now. Tim Johnson is here, and Tim has another important meeting to make on our behalf.
Yes,
and
sir.
So to accommodate his meeting with ODOT, he's asked to be recognized now. David?
Right, Mr. Chairman. This is item 6, recommend resolution approving preliminary report from MAPS 3 Oklahoma River Phase 2 Improvements, Project M3-R005. I'd like to turn it over to Tim Johnson.
Good morning. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates. Happy to be here. This is a brief presentation on where we are with our preliminary report, preliminary plans for the Phase 2 portion of the work along the river. Make sure I can make this work. Sorry, Mark.
Where'd Mark go?
Yeah. Underneath? This one. I'm sorry. Oh, the left one. Okay. It's not working. Sorry. Technical difficulties.
Danny, go ahead and advance.
There we go. Pardon me? Okay. Thank you, Danny. The project includes several items, probably about 10 different items. Some of them will be considered together. Some of them are separate. Starting docks and judging platforms. Those, as part of the preliminary report, we've been asked to be able to split out as separate specifications so that we can bid those more sooner than later as a separate package. And we've agreed to do that in our contract, and the report recommends that we be able to do that. And what that allow would be the product to be delivered before the October Olympic trials. And so that's our goal. Go ahead. Go ahead and move on, I'm sorry. Other items are LED accent lighting, which we talked at the subcommittee presentation about possibly changing that up from the original thought process. The original thought was to put the LED lights straight up and down on the light poles, but because of maintenance issues and concerns regarding that, we are looking at alternatives. The alternatives would be lighting our starting and finish line platforms that we're creating and doing some active lighting on top of that, and we've presented that to the stakeholders. They all like the idea and the concept, and so we're going to proceed forward on our final plans with that. Thanks. Our cable crossover and markers, that's going to be incorporated with our cabling system that goes under the lake. Originally, it was thought that we put the cable crossovers at each identified starting mark that would be over the boaters, but the end users would prefer to have them marked in the lanes, and so we've included that in our design for our albino system. The starting towers and timing huts, as I mentioned, there will be 6 of those on the south side of the river with a specific design to allow for the judging to stand on a platform that visualizes exactly where everybody's at, so they can determine that the races are started properly. Utility infrastructure includes, we're running cabling across under the river when it's down. We'll be running fiber, telecom, and electricity over to each tower. We're also including sound infrastructure for the South Bank, timing displays, as well as gateway enhancements and signage throughout the project, video camera systems that will go in the towers, and new access ramp to allow for the assembly of the starting gates that have already been purchased to be assembled in one spot before they're lowered into the water. Right now they do them a piece at a time on a muddy bank, and it's very difficult to put in and put out. And we've included as an alternate bid in the project a storage building. Right now they've got a temporary storage area. We think it's really important with all the cost of these improvements that they have a safe place, secure place to store this that would allow them access to it in the winter months so they can make any repairs they need to make to the equipment. And at last, we are also including electrical transformer screening, which throughout a meeting yesterday, we've discussed the coordination of the electrical transformer screening that fits the master plan on the north side of the river, being coordinated with our signage program. So we think we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone by allowing these transformer screens to act as some of the signage that we're proposing on the wayfinding. Just as a point of reference, this shows the main markers for the river starts. We have added, that doesn't show on here, we added kind of at the last minute a 200-meter starting marker, and that will be included in the towers. So again, there'll be 6 towers along the south bank. The albino cabling system, as many of you understand it to be, it's an anchored system that's anchored under the river. It's designed to take the river flow. There are security measures being put in with regard to safety to snag floating debris before it gets to these marker areas to minimize destruction during high water events like we've seen in the last few months. But the end product will provide the accurate lane markings and lane numberings as you see in this picture. The signage, the blue, green, and red dots shown on this is an example of the signage. The coincidental signage that I was talking about with the covers for the transformers would replace some of the red dots along 6th Street. This is an example of the sign imagery that we've been working with the Boathouse District on. We've actually prepared 4 different scenarios of signs to review. This was the preferred sign design. We will also, as you know down there's been a lot of work on the master plan and angles of the sloping of the triangles and things like that. All that is incorporated into these signs so that we'll have matching degrees of sloping on the markings. And this is an example of what the tower finish line and starting towers will look like. It'll look like a steel tube. The clear circle around the top is where the camera will be. The person standing there above the 1,000-meter mark would be your judge, for example. So it's just a place for 1 or 2 people to be during the judging and starting of the races. We're going to provide a very light material as a cover to screen them from the heat. And the materials that are shown in red on this image are going to be made out of the same materials that are being proposed for this windscreen. And through some meetings, we've determined that the color scheme will probably be all white with dark, bright blue letters for the meter markers. That'll, again, fall in line with everything that's been master planned. There's several images of this. This is a plan view, isometric view. And our goal is to push this tower out as close to the edge of the riprap as we can. We're going to work with Public Works on how close can that be without infringing on the core property. Ideally, we'd like to be just inside the riprap because there are no utilities there. There won't be anything in our way. Plus, in the future, the Boathouse District and the river events people would like to have a clear path behind each of these towers for the coaches to ride a bike up and down as they're coaching their team. And this is the single long ramp. Originally, our scope included to have 4 ramps. After designing those and then getting with the people that assemble these starting gates, this is the final result. They opted to have a much longer, it's an 80-meter long area that is very flat, so they can assemble tests before they push it into the water downstream, and then that'll allow them to maneuver it to the various starting points along the river. The dashed line shows probably a material like a gravel or a crushed granite surface that they would use for their access to the proposed storage building, which is shown at the bottom of that page. This is just it's hard to see here, but this, our goal is that we're trying to tuck that building behind those cedar trees so that really it won't impact the river frontage there. And then finally, our budget numbers and our cost estimate at this point. You can see the budget is 4.469. Our cost estimate at this point is 4.2. We've got the building being bid as an alternate at $600,000, and the electrical transformer screening, that was a little bit of a guess on my part because I hadn't seen the final drawings on that. But we think it'll be in the range of $100,000 to $150,000. And again, as I mentioned, we're probably going to work that into the signage budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Tim? Dee, Michael, any comments from the subcommittee?
We would like to recommend that we go ahead and pass this and get moving so we can be on schedule. And thank you, Tim, for all your hard work. Mike?
Okay, that was a motion. Is that right,
Yes,
Dee?
it's a motion.
All right, that's a motion. David, do you have any comments? We didn't give you a chance to comment before we go forward.
No, sir. As Dee said, we'd like to see this approved. The subcommittee approved it on Tuesday, and we're ready to keep proceeding with the project.
Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The resolution is approved. Dee and Michael, I want to commend you for the dispatch with which you guys are getting these projects done. And I want to, since we're on your subcommittee, you want to take a minute to tell them about Saturday night, Dee?
Sure, yes. Big event Saturday night for us and the first MAPS project to really sort of get out of the gate, so we're very excited. This will mean that we have the world's first permanently lit race course, and there's a huge schedule of events on Saturday. You're probably all aware of the Stars and Stripes River Festival. At 8:45 to 9:15 in the evening is a river lighting, and we certainly hope all of you will be able to attend and the committee on. Do you have anything, Mike?
I guess just as you said, I mean, this is, I guess, the official ribbon cutting for the first MAPS 3 project, so it's kind of groundbreaking, and I think it's important. But
Well, I would encourage you all to come if you can. The mayor's going to be there. It will be a celebration of sorts of the first completed project under MAPS 3, and it's at 8:30 or whenever the sun goes down. And the city council, of course, as a policy matter, is in charge of when the sun goes down. So Pete will be in charge of that. Okay, that brings us then to item 4 on the agenda. It is an item that David's going to brief us on at the beginning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 4 is recommend resolution ratifying and approving addendum number 1 to the request for proposals and authorizing negotiation of contracts with the top two proposers, Oklahoma City County Health Department and Healthy Living, Inc., a nonprofit subsidiary of Putnam City Baptist Church, for the MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center operating partner, Project M3-H002A. This item was not approved by the subcommittee, the Senior Wellness Subcommittee, yesterday. There was a subsequent motion made, and I'd like to just turn it over to Mr. Dover if he wants to elaborate on.
Michael, before you begin, I want to talk about a matter of process. I have a request from our good citizen Bill Fleming to speak on this subject, and our process will be that the members of the Citizens Advisory Board will be able to ask questions first. Bill, the chairman of our subcommittee, will present this, as David has already said, and it will be discussed. But during this item on the agenda, you will have an opportunity to speak, but it'll be after this discussion. You bet. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first I want to say it's been a long time coming. As we all recall, we've gone through quite a process on our subcommittee getting to where we are today. As you mentioned, David, the resolution that was included in our packet that would in effect move two projects forward, the two that you mentioned, actually did not pass. It was actually a tie vote, and so therefore that resolution did not pass. But a subsequent resolution did pass, and that resolution asked that we move forward with one of the projects, one of the two, and that would be City County Health Department. And without getting into all the nuts and bolts, unless people would like to do that, I would like to say, if anyone has any questions, I think that between Dr. Griffin and David, and hopefully I might add something to that, we can talk about what the logic was behind that. But the vote was 4-3 with one abstention to move City County Health Department forward to begin. The recommendation is to move that organization forward to begin negotiations to implement the first wellness center for MAPS.
To give you a little background, there was a panel, the selection panel that was convened that went through this process and interviewed the proposers.
David, remind us, how many, were there 20 some odd proposals, and it was dwindled down to
There were four together. We interviewed the four, and the initial vote showed that there was three that were closely scored. So it was decided that a second round of interviews would be held with those top three. After that second round of interviews and the scoring, it came to a tie, and it was the committee's decision that they would forward on to the subcommittee the recommendation for the two proposers to negotiate with them. So that's the report we got back from the committee. Then the subcommittee, after a lengthy discussion yesterday, decided that that isn't what they wanted to do, and they wanted to proceed with just City County Health.
City County Health, they're going to proceed with the first one. Will they go back? Will you just go back now in the subcommittee and look at the other three again and decide who would proceed with project 2 or 3 or 4?
Well, I think the timeline, as you remember, thing we're all bound by, that I expect that we will proceed with another RFP. But David, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that we probably would have to go through that process, but it somewhat depends upon the timing of that. If we were to turn around in 3 or 6 months or something, like short period like that, and decide to do the second one, maybe we could continue to use this RFP process. That would have to come from legal, tell me if that's appropriate. But if it extends further out, then you would have to think that with conditions changing, that maybe the proposers might have a different situation. There might be other proposers out there. So it's kind of still up in the air.
I had a question. Were the two proposed operators coming in together to operate, or they were each proposing a separate facility?
They were proposing separate proposals. They were not together.
I read it as being jointly proposing to do.
Since since you and Michael and Gloria and I and probably Pete sat through this and know a lot about it, we're asking some people to vote on it that haven't been in on that, and I think an explanation of who they are and how we got to where we are would be helpful to those of us, to those on the Citizens Advisory Board that haven't heard this. But the two were Putnam City Baptist Church, who's represented here today, and the City County Health Department. And you said, Michael, it was a 4-4 vote, so obviously the subcommittee, there was, I guess, some sentiment both ways, and then the recommendation you brought was 4-3 with one abstaining. So if you want us to fully appreciate what seems to be a very close call here, why don't you tell us more about it?
I think the biggest issue had to do with, did we want to recommend to move forward with two? Some of us believed our charge was to, because of the timeline, was to select one of the partners to move forward with. And I think that's fundamentally, for some of us anyway, if not most of us, the issue. So the resolution that was recommended by the review committee, because it was a tie on those two entities tied for moving forward with the first operating partner, and they sent that recommendation to the subcommittee. I think what we wrestled with, did we want to move forward with two, or did some of us believe that our charge was two because of the timeline? And even though I will tell you that the timeline is such that the beginning of the process for the second wellness center is not too far down the road, but nevertheless, I think some of us wanted to move forward with that resolution, moving one forward. But
I'm sorry, I just want to ask a question, if I may. I just wanted to get it clear in my mind. So we're moving forward with one contractor to be an operator for the first wellness center. We still have 2, 3, and possibly 4 wellness centers that will be, it could be the same one or it could be one of the others. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes. Gloria?
No, I was concurring with what Mr. Dover stated in terms of moving forward with one. There was a lot of discussion centered around, let us put one out and see how successful we are with it. I also heard in our discussion there will still be some delays. We will not be able to really move with two. There's an architect, I believe we need for the second project. There was another delay. So rather than waiting, and this is something that's been on the out there for some time, that we really need to move forward with this. Our citizens want to see action.
Dee?
Was it the original intent to get one operator to operate all 4 facilities as far as like savings on budget and philosophy, that kind of thing?
no, not at all. We were open to the fact if we got a proposal that one wanted to do that. Correct me again if I'm wrong, David. We were open to looking at that, but our charge was to select the first operating partner.
Bob?
In the first go-around, when the first RFPs came back, including, as I recall, City County Health, the subcommittee felt that they were not adequate at that time. What has changed with City County Health? And as I recall, the big concern was really not necessarily bricks and mortar and getting the thing designed as much as bearing the operating cost on down the line. And I take it that's been satisfied in some way in the committee discussion.
Yes, Bob, during our interviews and in the RFP, it was asked that because of the first go-around, and we learned that both the YMCA and the City County Health Department, as you will recall, were responded to the first RFP, and they both, in effect, said that they did not believe that they could provide the operating cost for operating the facility without a city subsidy. And so, excuse me, that's in large part what took us back to the table, and as you say, and so after that, what happened is that Mike Mize and Nicole Franklin did just an incredible job going out and visiting with many other potential partners, and I forget how many, Nicole, there were 15, 17. In any event, and when we got down to those four, and by the way, all of three of those four said that in their RFP said that they could operate the facility without a subsidy. City County Health Department and Putnam City Baptist Church and one other of the facilities, Valier, who did not make the second round of interviews. When we sat down and interviewed with questions and answers and following up, they both said that that they would be able to operate the facility without a city subsidy. So that changed, of course, in large part why they were back on the table.
Tom, could I, a follow-up question? Did either of the two proposers involve other sort of sub-partners, if you will, that will assist them, even though they will be the operating partner? Are there others that help them facilitate their operation?
Yes, City County has several partners.
Okay. And do we have to contract then with them, or is that just a matter for City County Health?
Well, there's still negotiations that have to go along with this. This is authorization to begin that negotiation process. So there'll be a contract that will be approved with the operators, and within that they'll have various subcontractors, and we will have some say, but we're not going to manage their subcontractors.
Our contract's going to be with City County Health if we approve.
Right, and I might also add that as far as the subsidy, that'll also be dealt with in the contracts. There was some language here and there that subsidies were talked about, and it's kind of still up in the air on some of those, so that'll be part of that negotiation also.
Amanda?
Right, just as David Todd explained, the contract would be with the proposer only, because both entities both have subcontractors that they would be using, and then we would have a provision in the contract that would allow us to have some control over who their subcontractors are and the ability to step in and make suggestions as to whether or not those subcontractors should remain or not, or have certain terms.
That was my question, really. To put it in a nutshell, do we have perhaps even a veto power over subcontractors once we've entered into the contract with the proposal?
And that would be part of the negotiations, and like I've said, both of the possible proposers or partners have entities that they would be working with as subcontractors.
Okay, thank you.
And all of the aspects of those contracts, when they come back, you'll be looking at and you'll have to approve.
Mike, I wanted to make sure I understood what you said. I read those proposals, and I thought they both talked about subsidies, and I guess I thought that City County had asked for a subsidy of $150,000 and with the opportunity to increase it. Did I misunderstand that?
No, again, in the written responses to the RFP, both of the partners asked for subsidies.
How much did Baptist Church?
Putnam City Baptist Church asked for a subsidy for year one only, and that was it was over $100,000. I recall exactly how much. City County Health Department asked for a subsidy for about over $100,000 for all 4 years. Having said that, during the interview process, we questioned at length the necessity of, if that didn't happen, if the city was not able to or did not agree to putting a subsidy on the table, would the partner be willing to go it alone without the subsidy? And in the questions and answers in the interviews, they both said that they would be able to do that.
Can we ask who the subsidy partners are for both City County and Putnam City, please?
I don't understand subsidy
The
partners.
other partners, the subcontracting partners.
David?
Well, City County Health has a long time been a partner with the YMCA, and they're going to do a lot of the aquatics part. Putnam City Baptist Church has multiple partners that they propose. They're going to form a 501c3 separate from the church. That was their plan. So I can't remember off the top of my head all the partners that were in there, but I remember that Healthy Living, Inc. had multiple partners, and as far as City County, they mostly had the YMCA, is what I remember.
Michael?
Did the proposals on either case indicate what area of the city we're talking about building this
Oh,
facility?
yes.
Yes, absolutely. They are site-specific.
Okay.
City County Health proposal is at their campus at 63rd and ML King, that general area. And then the Healthy Living, Inc. is at 122nd and Rockwell in that general area. So they are site-specific.
Anyone else? Before Bill comes forward, I want to just make this brief comment. I absolutely favor going forward with the City County Health Department. I think it's a good idea. What I do disagree with is the charge. And it may be that the subcommittee has a different charge than our board has, but I view our charge as having a plan that is designed to achieve our goal of having multiple geographically dispersed senior wellness centers. And as I reflect on the process that we've had to date, we have been delayed substantially because we couldn't find those operating partners. And as Mike said so eloquently, Mike and Nicole and others went out seeking partners from all quarters, and we had many people look at it and decline for a variety of reasons, many people that came to the initial meetings. And so our first effort didn't yield a proposal that we wanted. And so we had to redo it, and that took us 6 months or so to redo the RFP. Now, I'm in favor of a plan that encourages people to be our partner. And I do not favor a plan that will be a discouragement to people that have been approved by the evaluating team. And I do not believe our charge is necessarily to pick one first and go do it. I think that's the policy decision that the City Council is going to have to make. We have an implementation plan, but in my view, we could deal with the pace by the negotiation. I think in the negotiations, we could say, we're going to do this one first, and you need to plan on yours doing second. Here's the implementation plan. If the implementation plan does not fit their schedule, they can bring that back to us, and we can consider it, ultimately taking it back to the council. Right now, I would just say I'm in favor of following the implementation plan we have, but I do not favor taking an action that will discourage the very process that we have spent the last year trying to build and get people in here to do this, and to then either eliminate them or to tell them that we just like somebody else's better, so we're going to go with it first, and we hope to see you in 6 months. I just think is a wrong-headed decision, and I do believe, from a business standpoint, it is really inconceivable to me that we would miss our goal. And you just wouldn't do this in a business context. You wouldn't discourage someone that you know has already been approved to do something. The pace of it, I have no argument about, and doing the city-county, I don't have any, and by the way, I'm a Methodist. So, I mean, I don't have a dog in this fight, but my business instincts tell me we got to keep every ball in the air we have, because we spent a year not having any balls to throw in the air. That's my comment. Michael? The contrary view.
The thing that I do think is important to note is that we all know, of course, that MAPS is pay-go, and that money needs to be in the bank before we proceed with these partners. And it is true that, of course, we're behind the schedule on our first operating partner. But the other part of that implementation plan, in large part for those of us who discussed this over and over for almost three years now, was that the allowance of doing these one at a time, it would, and again, we all agreed we didn't think that they would be cookie-cutter facilities, but that it would allow us to see what works and what doesn't work. And so the other piece, I think it's important to note, that went in, at least to my thinking, and perhaps to others, they'd have to speak for themselves, was that issue. Now, having said that, again, I think that's important to note that we weren't necessarily selecting one over the other because we thought one was, well, although some of us might have, thought one was better, but the timing was such that we thought it was important to move forth with one based on that premise.
I I understand your point. I just think it is a goal that can be achieved by us telling two people, one's going to be first, one is going to be done a year and a half from now. I mean, I think that can all be handled in the negotiation. And losing the opportunity for someone is something that is a real concern to me. Gloria, you want to be heard?
Yes. We got the impression, at least I got the impression, that we were really in a position where we could negotiate, the staff could negotiate with the two, but there was uncertainty on where you would go from there, and whether or not it would be with City County or with Healthy Living, and that we did not have too many options in terms of giving further guidance to staff in that selection process.
My thought is that anything that the staff negotiates will come back through the committee process and ultimately will be decided by the city council. And I don't think we've lost an option, have we, David?
I don't believe so. We might have the municipal councilor address the actual legality of that, but I think that there is latitude for us to do those negotiations and deal with the timing on it.
The resolution that's before this board is simply to negotiate the contract to find two partners. It does not state which partner will go first, which partner will go second. It doesn't move the projects up in the timeline whatsoever. That would require an additional action to come back through the subcommittee, through the board, and through council for them to make that decision. This allows staff to authorizes staff to negotiate a contract with both entities to be a partner. The determination of who goes first or who goes second can be made through another motion. It can be made at the time that the contracts come back through. It does not designate one partner above another. It just allows us to select these two as partners and negotiate a contract with them.
I mean, let me clarify in my own mind. So these two would be partners?
I use the term partners. They would be partners with the city. They wouldn't be partners with each other. We'd have two partners selected. We'd have a partner number one and a partner number two.
And one would operate one of the facilities and the other would operate another of the facilities of the total?
That's correct. There's just no designation as to who's going to operate the first one versus the second one.
Bob?
Well, I'm finding myself persuaded by your comments about seizing the opportunity that we have. I wonder, too, if I'm recalling correctly, we haven't gone beyond the operating partner aspect of this. We've not negotiated with architects or engineers or done any of that process. And I wonder if we would not gain some efficiencies if we already have the two operating partners lined up in terms of the negotiating the next steps on down the line of the planning and design and implementation.
Actually, we do have an architect on board for the first one. They've been sitting, waiting for just what you said, so that we can get.
Remember how that
right. You're right. It's been a while. So we're waiting for this operating partner to be chosen, and once we get that tied down and we know what we're doing, then they will work with the architect to do this first center. And similarly, on the second one, we'll do the same.
If we were to move forward now and propose, and the council were to approve, negotiated with two operating partners, where does that put us then with respect to selecting architects and engineers and so on with respect to a second partner?
As far as the implementation plan, we're about a year away from when it says that we should start architecture. But typically, the process of interviewing architects starts 4 months before that, just because of the process that we have to go through. So we're a little ways from that, but when you look at the implementation plan as far as negotiating with the operating partner, the way it's scheduled now, that's about 6 months away. So it's fairly close.
On the schedule for the second.
For the second one, correct.
And we're a year and a half behind on the first one.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that is what I was referring to, the constant delays that have taken place with this project for whatever reasons. And it's my understanding that there was not a clear direction in terms of what would happen next, and that possibly is what caused a lot of the discussion on yesterday, that we have one project ready to go in terms of negotiation. We have the architect. We have those things in place. But the second project would be at least a year down even before we get started.
At this point in time, you're correct. The timeline provides that for a year, approximately a year before we start the design. However, the negotiations would not hinder any of that timeline. What would happen next is if this was approved and council approved it, the Oklahoma City staff would start negotiations with the two partners. A contract would come back to this board and back to the subcommittee, the board and council. If that contract is approved, it would be determined whether or not they're going to be the partner for the first one or for the second one. It really just depends on what the decision is and the desire is of the subcommittee, board, and ultimately council. The contract negotiations would not stop that. We don't have to have both contracts in place before we can move forward with the first one. We need to have at least one contract in place.
I agree with moving forward with both, and that's how I would intend to vote. And we have a lot of uncertainty. What will it look like? I mean, I want to start seeing some terms that we can actually say. I want to see what they can come up with as far as terms on the contract. So that way we can actually have less uncertainty and actually say, okay, now I get it. This will go first, and this will go in a year and a half. And then we can actually have another chance to review it and say, well, try again. We'd rather see it this way. But right now, it seems like too easy to be very concerned about uncertainty, and I would vote to move forward with it because also you have a little bit of kind of healthy competition as well, and to say who's ready to start now, kind of who wants it more, but in a very positive way. We like you both, but we also want to see who's ready to do it now. So it's very kind of healthy competitive approaches.
I think that was kind of my thought too. Is that it seems like negotiating simultaneously with two groups would bring up maybe some best practices and some ideas that one may have that maybe the other hadn't considered, as well as Nathan or Nathaniel mentioned, kind of the competitive nature of the negotiations might be some benefits to that as well. So I guess that's the only question I see is really whether we want to move. There was no question about one of them being more qualified than the other or anything else.
No.
It was all just, do we want to tackle one now or two now? Is that correct, Michael?
I don't think that's true. I think for some of us there was some questions. I can't speak for everyone, but it was more than just both are eligible, both are qualified, and we both go with both simultaneously. Without getting into particulars of the merits of either proposal, I don't, that's not the charge here this afternoon or this morning. But I think the message that was sent to the community was that for some of us that we picked a wellness center in this particular case that's located in the zip code with the worst health outcomes in the city. And the message that we wanted to send to the community is that this first senior wellness center, again, for timing, the first senior wellness center, the message was we wanted to put it in a community that needed it the most. So in that sense, I think there was.
But that could still occur under the...
That could still occur.
That could still occur. Even if we're negotiating with 2 weeks, that still could be the first.
That still could occur. But Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong. What I thought I heard you say yesterday is that if we went through with negotiating with both of these entities, and let's say, for whatever the reasons were, that Putnam City Baptist Church, that negotiation took place and was completed before City County Health Department, then we would move forward with that.
That contract would come back before the subcommittee, the board, and the council first, but you could make the decision that you want them to be on the second facility. That decision could be made.
That's not what I heard yesterday, but I hear what you're saying today.
It's not determined. If it comes back first, that would need to be a decision that would be made. It would be likely, the thought would be that the first one available would do the first one, but that's ultimately a decision for the subcommittee, board, and council.
I concur with you, Michael. That was not that clear yesterday. And also, we did talk about location. We did talk about need. Sure. We did talk about what we are saying to the citizens of this community.
Sure.
And without getting into all the particulars, we also talked about geography. If the first one's on the north side, maybe it's appropriate that we look at a partner. If there's a second go-around, that may come from the south side. I mean, we again, it's hard to explain the process of all of the time and effort in the discussion and paraphrase that in a few minutes here this morning. But my point is, we did look at a lot of variables.
And we do have in front of us the recommendation of the people who interviewed everybody. And their recommendation is what we have in front of us.
I'm sorry, what?
So what we have in front of us is the recommendation of the people that interviewed everybody. Is that right?
Well,
The team.
No. Everyone on the subcommittee was not involved in the interviews. If that's
Well, I didn't ask my question right. There were some subcommittee members and city staff and others that interviewed all the people.
Yeah.
And it is their recommendation that we have in front of us today that you guys tied on 4-4 yesterday. Okay, good. Sue, you had a comment.
I have a couple comments. The first one is, since we have a 1.5-year delay, remember I'm a woman, so I'm thinking we have this amount of money for this project that's been accruing more interest than it would if we were dipping out of it and already building and working. So it seems like maybe we've got just a little extra money in your pot. It's still your pot of money, but maybe we could move not a year, but a couple months ahead on that second contract, which I think would be reasonable and fair. And remember, I'm the vice chair of the Convention Center Committee, and you know we want to move years ahead, but that's not going to happen. But a couple things just kind of wiggle in my mind. I have had years' worth of experience working with entities like County Health Department, and I don't want us to get delayed on breaking ground and building something when perhaps some of those more state and federal entities have got more loopholes to jump through. So if we've got two viable partners, I'm all for two viable partners, and personally, I'm for who's ever got their ducks in a row. Is our citizens are ready for these senior wellness centers, and we're going to make some decisions, and we're going to build, and then we're going to learn, and we're going to build even better on the second, the third, and the fourth. So it doesn't matter to me who's ready first or not, who's partner A or who's partner B, but I love the idea of having, of supporting the committee and the 4-4. I really don't want to say if it was a 4-4. I just don't want to say no to another side.
I'd like to just address the financial part of it.
Yeah,
if you look in the implementation plan, you'll see that each of the wellness centers, as you go through consecutively, there's a larger budget for them, and that's because of inflation. So as we've been sitting here gaining interest, as you mentioned, we've also been losing to inflation. So it will probably equal out. So we don't have any extra money there.
But inflation was always part of the deal. The delay was not exactly. See, you got to think like a woman here.
This may be a question for the ADG can answer, but is there any problem with going with two and having two separate wellness centers? I know they may not be, right off from the starting blocks, but in going at the same time, is there a problem with the master schedule if we do that?
First of all, it's been pointed out that the implementation plan was approved by City Council, and if we did move something forward, I believe, and I think Amanda would agree, that if we moved it forward significantly, it would require an additional vote of City Council. In terms of having the cash available, that is not an issue. Because of the way that tax revenues accrued in MAPS 3, and I'll try to make this as simple as I can. We are in the process of accruing a significant amount of money for some large projects, the fairgrounds, but primarily the convention center, which is supposed to have that money accrued by the first quarter of 2016. Because of the way these funds are accrued, anything that is currently scheduled before the first quarter of 2016 can be shifted within that time frame prior to 2016 without impacting what happens to other projects. So a simple answer would be, in terms of having cash available, yes, the cash could be available if a second one were moved up.
I want to give Councilman White a chance. He's been waiting his opportunity. So you're next.
I'd like to say this about what I saw yesterday. There was a great deal of discussion about policy yesterday, which is exactly what, as a council member, I look to the subcommittees and this committee to talk about policy. I understand that ultimately policy is ours, but I think some of that has emanated out from us that people should have some understanding of what our policy is. I think what happened yesterday is a result of two things that no one had any control over. The first one is, well, somebody had control over the first one. The first thing is these projects were not vetted before they went to the voter. You've heard me argue that from the council about other things. I think this is so patently obvious that this project was not vetted. So that vetting, that service that this committee's done for the council in vetting these projects and vetting the ideas and figuring out all the way is valuable to us. Because we didn't do it, which we should have, I will tell you, but we didn't do most of that. So that's going on at the subcommittee level and at this level, and that's appreciated, I think. The second thing is, it should have never been a tie. There should have been a tiebreaker rule, because the idea that you go down to pick the first project and you pick the first two projects when I think the policy questions that were raised are things that need to be raised. I mean, there were things raised about location. It is, as someone that represents the South Oklahoma City Board and have done it longer than most of y'all have been involved in politics, I will tell you that putting the first one at 63rd and MLK and the second one at 122nd Rockwell will not fly well with the policy side in South Oklahoma City. It may not even fly well in the policy side of the south portion of northeast Oklahoma City, because geographically it's problematic. It's problematic for me. I didn't say that yesterday, but I'm telling you, those were the discussions that committee had. They were not discussions about process. The people that wanted to go forward with 4 talked about process. The people that want to go forward with 1 talked about policy. And I favored the policy discussion. I think those are the kinds of things that need to happen. And I'm going to vote, and Tom just told me I had a vote. I wasn't sure that I did, but I'm going to vote to go forward with 1. And that doesn't have anything to do with anything other than I believe that was the role. I believe that was the mission, to pick 1 and go with 1. And I believe in looking at the proposals, City County Health was head and shoulders above any of the rest of them. But I wasn't on that first committee, and I didn't vote yesterday. But in reading all of it, I thought they were by far and away. I mean, once you get, it's very difficult to get past locating the first facility in the area of Oklahoma City that has the worst health outcomes. You have a hard time getting by that and making that one number 1, in my opinion. I don't know what we do about the second one, but I don't think anybody intended to pick 2 when they went to the committee, and I don't think anybody expected there to be a tie. I don't think anybody expected there then to be a tie in moving the thing forward. I think it's just a coincidental complications that arise out of that kind of thing. But I would tell you that I appreciate the discussion. For those that were in favor of going forward with 1 talked about policy. Those that were in favor of going forward with 2 talked about process. And I personally liked the policy discussion better than I did the process discussion. Okay. I was asked what I thought about the timeline, and I did make this comment. My view on the timeline is you send us the best recommendation you can, and that's what we want. We're not interested in whether one starts in 2 months or one starts in 3 months. It's already been delayed a long time. Our fault, in my opinion, it's been delayed this long, and we just want the best. We just want your best thoughts, and that's.
Anyone else?
I would like to, I guess, go back to, I'm hearing now, I guess, a geography question that I hadn't heard before. And you've mentioned that the one up on the city councils is up in the zip code that has the worst health outcomes. So in the committee's process, or subcommittee's process, did we identify sites or areas of town and prioritize the areas of town or zip codes or whatever the case may be as to where we want to be sited, and should the site consideration be a key factor in determining the selection of the partner?
It was an issue. I mean, it was more of an issue for some of us than from others. I think it's fair to say that for some of us that was a very important issue. I don't know that it was the most important issue for everyone on the subcommittee. Lori, what are your thoughts?
Of course, the health issues that face Oklahoma City, Oklahoma County is at the forefront. And we are aware of the work that the Oklahoma City County Health Department has underway now. And the proposal that they brought to this committee really interfaced and would support our goal as a city to have a healthier community.
Well, I guess let me rephrase or ask again. Have we identified prime areas that we should place these health centers so that, regardless of the value of or the qualifications of the partner, we say that's not the prime area where one should be, it ought to be here. I mean, have we gone through that sort of process, excluding consideration of the partners as to where these should be sited, and therefore that should be a consideration when we go to talking to partners?
Let me say, I've been to the meetings. I do not think that process happened. I think what they were instructed to do was to get them that were geographically dispersed throughout the city. And I think most of the understanding has been that there would be, if we had 4, they'd be in 4 different quadrants of the city.
But if we only have 3, they're not going to be in 4 quadrants. So we have identified the 3 quadrants.
I'm just saying that no one said, we got to get one in one special place first. No. Now, I say Mike is saying that he'd like one in one special place first, and I think Gloria is saying she'd like one in one special place first. But I don't think that was part of the evaluation process that took place with the team that evaluated and vetted these proposals.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add that there was healthy discussions during the interviews about, as Mr. Dover said, health outcomes and conditions in various parts of town, and Planning Department did do a document that identified some areas, but a lot of what drives the location is what works for the proposer, and the proposers, it became very obvious that what made it viable for them to do is to include it in something they're already doing.
Yeah. Because
the staff is adjacent and they could do that. So City County is where they are. Putnam City Baptist Church is where they are. Valor, for instance, had one near their campus here close to downtown, and they needed to be adjacent to their facility also. And North Care equally, they were on their campus. So the proposers, just as who they are, somewhat drove where these places would be located. They couldn't just necessarily go out and find a lot and build something. But there were some evaluations done with Planning Department and evaluated the city and where regions might need these.
Well, I guess if I looked at it as though the city said they were going to operate all these and they were meeting the community needs, they would go out and find where they thought those needs were and try to do, and they would build them. They were government projects, public projects. They build them where they thought the needs were.
That hasn't happened.
And this seems to be a different process. So is that, I guess, how big of a concern is that, or is that something we should revalue?
Bob, you've been patient. You're next.
Well, I want to pick up on what Dave was saying and perhaps put it in the context that Councilman White was talking about. In an ideal world, you could have this separate policy and process debate, and you could pick which one was more important and go that direction. I don't think you can separate them. As a matter of policy, we could say, well, we want one of these centers in all 4 quadrants. Actually, you could even get more specifically, we want it down to a specific street or block or whatever, because that would nearly perfectly meet the needs of the community. We could make that as a policy decision, and that's relatively easy to do. But then you can't find a partner. You get into the process part, that you can't find that operating partner for whom that policy decision works. And so you have to make a compromise of some kind. Maybe you don't have the most perfect location for that center, but you have one that's reasonably practical because you have an operating partner that can implement it. Otherwise, you don't have anything. And so I think you have to be accommodated on both the policy and process side and recognize the two are really not separate. You can't make a policy decision independent of the practicalities of where the operating partner is, nor should you just give in to the operating partner and say, well, put it wherever you want to. I mean, we've got to have that say. But it seems to me that we could have our cake and eat it too and move forward with negotiating with both partners at the present time, which doesn't in any way impact our ultimate policy decision about, given the best that we can do in terms of available partners and available locations, then let the policy come into play as to if we're able to negotiate with both successfully. Then, as a matter of policy, which one do we want to have first?
Sure.
And is that location the best that we can possibly do under the circumstances? I could say, I want one on Southwest 29th in May, just to pick a random spot. But if I can't find an operating partner to operate at that location, even if the city were to build one there, my policy decision about where I want that wellness center is meaningless. And so I think right now we've got a couple of eggs in the basket, and I think we ought to take advantage and cook those eggs as best we can, and then we can decide once those negotiations are done as a policy matter where we ought to go.
Excuse me. Nathaniel, you had your hand up earlier?
Well, those are my comments, so he was cheating off my notes.
This is a rare exception for someone to adopt. So, Gloria.
I certainly support policy and process, but there's another P, and that's people. And when I look at what the Oklahoma City County Health Department has done in demonstrating its commitment to people, and where it chose to build its first regional complex, and those things that are already in place, and I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to go there, the trails are already in place, the community gardens are already in place, not waiting for this project to come forth to do that. That indicates that they identified a section of the city that needed the most help, and that was primarily in the zip code 73111. And it's my understanding that they have had a number of people who have come into that facility. The facility, the regional complex there is constantly busy. So we can talk about policy, we can talk about process, but we also need to look at meeting the needs of the people.
Can I just follow up? And Gloria, I agree 100%. And as a matter of policy, if it were solely my decision, that would be the location where the first one would go. I just want to take advantage of the fact that we have two willing operating partners who are qualified and not lose the opportunity to negotiate with them, because then we can make that policy decision as to where the first one goes. And I would certainly lean that way right now. There are other things that might happen between now and then, but I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of wanting not to lose, as Tom was talking earlier, not to lose the opportunity that we have with the second partner who's willing to step up and negotiate with the city at the present time.
Okay. Are we ready to invite our guest?
Let me make one other comment.
Okay.
I think the charge that this committee has, the subcommittee on the Wellness Center, is kind of like trying to sew a button on custard pie. I mean, it's a moving target. We started out with we called it an aquatic center. If you remember, I've heard a lot of conversation, some of it coming out of this and a lot of it coming out of the convention thing, about what we told the public. we talk to the public about aquatic centers, but what we found out is that aquatic centers are so expensive to operate, nobody's going to operate it. So we've modified that. This has changed over time. In fact, it is still changing today. As I understand, I got something in the mail wanting me to go to Little Rock to look at one. Now, if we're still looking for what we want, the idea of trying to do two at the same time troubles me greatly. If we still haven't made up our mind yet what we want, then the idea that we're going to take a bus to Little Rock and look at something different than either one of these two projects, I'm troubled by that.
Well, I think it's, we've had members of the subcommittee go to Arkansas before and look, so this wouldn't be a change, and I don't know that Little Rock is any different. It's certainly a lot different than City County Health, but it's not different the way I read Putnam City's. In fact, it's very similar to what they suggested. Now, someone, do you charge for the hour, Bill Fleming? No? Okay, good. Okay. All right, are we ready to hear from Bill Fleming, who signed up? Here we go. Bill, come tell us what you think.
Okay. Bill Fleming, representing Putnam City Baptist Church. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for allowing me to make a few remarks. I appreciate all of the issues that have been discussed here. I'm here to ask you to approve negotiations with two centers at the same time. We've invested a substantial amount of time and a lot of money getting to this point in this plan. In addition, we have some strategic partners. One of those is the Butterfield Foundation, which does the open arms clinics. And they have proposed to put a free clinic for seniors in our facility. And in order to keep our strategic partners together, in order to not have to go through this process again at a year down the road, it just makes sense to me that you would approve two at the same time if you have two willing candidates. And so we're asking you to do that. If we ended up being the second one, that's okay. We'll be patient, and we'll wait, and we'll do the second one. Obviously, we'd like to be first, but we're very passionate about the Wellness Center. We think we can make a difference in the city of Oklahoma City operating it. And so we just ask you to consider the original motion and enter into negotiations with two. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Other comments?
I guess I would have a question. I guess the concern is that if we don't move forward with two, we lose the opportunity from...
That's definitely my concern.
And is that the situation? Would you no longer be willing to...
Sir, we're very passionate about doing it, and we want to stay involved, but the truth of the matter is we'd have to go back through the whole process again and reconfirm commitments with our strategic partners and everything else, whereas if we have the opportunity to solidify that now, that wouldn't be the case.
Okay. I want to make sure, Mike, help me through this, Mike Dover. I want to, Amanda, would you come to the podium and let me...
Question now.
Pardon me?
I have a process question.
Yeah, well, yeah. What is on our agenda is what we can read there, and it is to move forward with two partners, and so to be true to our agenda, we need to vote on that first, or someone would need to amend that, or how do we get to... I guess we can vote on that first,
right?
And then we could consider what Mike and Gloria and their subcommittee brought forward, which was a different resolution. How do we do that?
Right. The resolution before you was forwarded on by the selection committee and would need to be handled at this time through a motion to accept or decline, to approve or deny. After that, if it is accepted, the motion that was put forward by the subcommittee to only negotiate with one could be stricken because you've already voted on the matter to continue with two. If it's denied, then the motion from the subcommittee to move forward with one would need to be addressed by this, and that would fall under Section 7, Discussion Action on MAPS 3 program.
Amanda, what if there's no motion to act on this? It's an agenda item, but I haven't heard anybody move for a motion to accept.
Well, we're trying to sort that out.
Right. We would need to have a motion to determine how this board would like to deal with this. If it turned out as a tie, similar to what happened in the subcommittee, I hope it doesn't, but it requires a majority. And so that's why the subcommittee's vote failed and it was denied. is because it requires a majority to be approved, or in the reverse, majority to be denied.
Is it normal, I mean, the normal process, if I understand the process, would be that resolutions coming to this board comes through the subcommittee. You're saying this was put forward by the selection group, not the subcommittee, is that correct?
The way that this process works is the selection committee makes a recommendation. They made that recommendation to the subcommittee. In the normal process that's determined by the policies of city council, there isn't normally a subcommittee and board, so that selection review committee recommendation would go directly to city council. So that recommendation will be included in any document that goes forward to city council. That will be provided as information to city council and to help them make their decision. Additionally, the information that came from the subcommittee, where there was the tie vote and it was denied, will go forward to this board because this is the entity which they make recommendations to.
So we can hear and act on proposals made by parties other than the subcommittees?
This isn't a proposal made by a party. This is by staff. It's the policies that the committee puts forth their recommendation. Staff prepared the resolution concerning their recommendation. It was not approved by the subcommittee because of the tie vote.
Right.
So yes, it's on your agenda to be considered.
Had it been rejected, would we still consider it?
I think what we're missing is because the agendas are prepared almost a week prior to now, that's why.
Why it's in here, but I didn't know whether things actually need to be brought forward by the subcommittees for us to act on.
No, Mike, we have many times over the course of the last 3 years, we have not had quorums in subcommittee meetings, and those items that were on their agenda were brought forward here. We have routinely and consistently considered things before our board that did not have the recommendation of the subcommittee. My personal preference is I love that. I love that orderly structure. But the fact is we don't have to, and I think that's Amanda's answer.
And Mr. Adams, yes, it would still be here. The recommendation would just indicate that it was denied. They don't make a decision. They make recommendations to this board. So this board then makes its recommendation to City Council. City Council makes the ultimate decision.
One last thing I want to thank you, Amanda. My suggestion is that maybe we have, unlike we do on many things, that perhaps we should have a roll call vote on this because what we have is the recommendation that is before us, and then we see how that turns out and decide where we go from there.
But to make this formal, I move approval of the recommendation that we negotiate with the two operating partner.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded that we adopt the resolution that is before us.
And I'll read the roll call, sir, when you're ready.
Okay. I hesitate to ask this, but is there further discussion? Okay. Well, great. I do want to say before we vote, we've already accomplished one great goal here. I mean, if Councilman White and the City Council wants us to vet these things, we're doing it. And I want to, no matter how anybody votes, I just want to say to you how much I appreciate everybody being engaged and voting your own conscience and doing whatever you think is the right thing to do, because that's all any of us are here to do. So thank you for all of this discussion. I don't think these decisions are going to get easier as we go along. They're probably going to get tougher. So brace yourself, and we'll be doing a lot of this. We've got to keep going. All right, roll call.
Susan Hooper?
Yes.
Michael Dover?
Nay.
Zane Bogart?
Nay.
Dee Morales? Michael Adams?
Nay.
Nathaniel Harding?
Yes.
Gloria Griffin?
No.
Bob Nealon? Pete White?
No.
Okay.
Do I get to vote?
Well, Tom McDaniel?
Yes.
Okay. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yes, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 no.
My gosh.
It fails.
Well, it failed.
Because of the tie, the motion has failed.
Okay, that takes us into item number 5 on the agenda, a resolution for the sidewalks.
Could I ask?
Go ahead.
Could we not, could a motion be entered now to amend that? Or would that have to have been done before we voted on it?
She told me to do that.
We would have had to do a motion to amend before.
It has to come under a separate item.
You can put forth an additional item.
I'm sorry. You want us to do that under item 7, I thought you said.
That's how it would normally be done. If you'd like to move it up, you're more than welcome to, Mr. Chairman.
Well, then, while we're on the subject, then shall we move it up?
Maybe we move it up.
It's been moved that we move it up. Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, and I've got the written motion here, so let me read it. And I didn't bring my reading glasses. I had cataract surgery on Mondays, but I think I can try to do this. I recommend a resolution ratifying and approving addendum number 1 to the request for proposals and authorizing negotiations of a contract with Oklahoma City County Health Department for the MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center's operating partner project, and I can't read those numbers.
It's Project M3-H002A.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? We'll have a roll call vote.
Susan Hooper,
Yes.
Michael Dover,
Yes.
Zane Budright,
Yes.
Dee Morales, Michael Adams,
Yes.
Nathaniel Harding,
Yes.
Gloria Griffin, Bob Nealon, Pete White, Tom McDaniel.
No.
Okay. The ayes have it. The motion passes.
All right. Then that takes us to item 5 on the agenda. David, you want to tell us about it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 5 is recommend resolution approving final plans and specifications for MAPS 3, Phase 1, Project 2, sidewalk improvements, and authorizing the city clerk to advertise for bids to be received on July 23, 2013, Project M3-W001A. If you recall, Phase 1, we are doing it in packages, and this is the second package of the Phase 1 sidewalk project, and we have Craig Wallace from Smith Roberts Baldwin here today to give you a presentation on these plans.
Welcome.
Good morning, Chairman and Board. Thank you for allowing us to come to present this. I'm Craig Wallace with Smith Roberts Baldwin, and this is a presentation on final plans for M3-W001A, MAPS 3, Phase 1, Project 2, sidewalks. Is my clicker working? Should I try this now? There we go. In this presentation, this is the title sheet for Project 2, shows the project site. As we look at the alignments that came from the sidewalk and master plan, this lists the project alignment rankings on the left. As you look at these different descriptions, you'll see that the majority of these items, or in fact all these items, are in South Oklahoma City. Project 1 was centralized in the northwest part of Oklahoma City. These are southwest Oklahoma City as the alignments from 1 through 20, which is what the alignments will fall in Phase 1 project. This actually shows those locations along with the alignment priority numbers. It also, in this particular map, shows some of the criteria, the middle school, high schools, transit routes, is why these were selected. This slide is actually a photograph of looking at some of those criterias that were looked at in the rankings. The proximity to schools, this particular slide shows a flashing school zone sign. If you look at this particular slide, you can also see connectivity. If you look just north or on past this ramp, you can see existing sidewalk structure that will be tied to. This also shows a desired path. It's hard to see because of lighting, but on your packet, you should see that there's a wear area or a desired path coming off of these ramps, and obviously that's why it ranked as high in the priority as what it was, because there is pedestrian traffic in that, creating these desired paths in the earthen area. We also looked at existing sidewalk structures or connectivity. These two slides actually show connectivity to two of our trail systems. On the left, the alignment 6. This actually ties to the Early Line Trail. The photograph on alignment 13 actually ties to the South Grand Boulevard Trail, and so the sidewalk project does have connectivity to that. Transit connections, you can see the bus stops. The sidewalks will tie to different transit routes, which you see on this particular slide. You can see the maps of the transit areas. It also shows the schools, elementary school, middle school, and high school areas. As we go on looking at final plans and specifications, there are 7 alignments, just as there were in Project 1, approximately 6.05 miles of alignment miles, right at 5 miles, about 4.6 miles of actual sidewalk structure that will be built at an engineer's estimated cost of about $1,247,000. If you look at the total budget for Phase 1 of $3.2 million construction budget, Project 1 has been awarded. The cost of that was $1,038,311. If we add the engineer's estimate here, it will actually show us where our budget is to date, or will be to date, and the remaining budget for a Project 3. As we look at the schedule, we see where we're at, obviously, in the final plan and specification area. Once these are approved, or if this is approved, it will move forward, obviously, to City Council for approval. Bid dates are set, I believe July 26th for this particular project, hoping to award the contract in August, and then completion of the 180-day project. This is anticipated to be a 180-day project, will be completed in February 2014. And with that, if you have any questions.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Nathaniel.
You mentioned connectivity to transit, which is great. I really support that. And does it contemplate any potential changes from the Nelson Nygaard study for the bus system? I know some of the bus routes will be changing. I don't know if it's going to change, in fact, what you showed us, but does it contemplate potential changes in the bus routes?
I don't know that we have. David, maybe you can address that.
No, it does not. It is based on the master plan that was done, nearly a year ago, that showed the transit routes as it is now. Remember that transit routes are a piece of the criteria that we used. It also included schools and density of businesses and neighborhoods and those kind of things, and desire paths for that matter. So it's not going to reflect any changes, but it's still on a lot of the transit routes as they exist now.
Sue, did you want to comment on this?
Maybe the only other thing, Nathaniel, is the fact that, again, these are main routes. So I don't anticipate they'll lose that because they're such main routes.
I was going to add the same thing. There are streets that are going to be covered by the bus system anyway. If you look at the streets they are, they're not neighborhood streets. They're streets along heavily traveled where the bus is going to be. I did have a question, though. Are your bids coming in such that you think we're going to be able to do substantially more sidewalks than our first? One of the big disappointments I had as a council member was we advertised we were going to do 70 miles, and we came up with 30 or 4 or something.
Right.
And so any additional funding that can extend that and get us closer to that promise we made when we had the map selection is going to be appreciated from my standpoint.
Councilman, I think we're kind of in the middle of the range that we expected, maybe a little at the top end of the middle, but our worst case scenario was $50 a lineal foot, and this last one I believe was at 42.
$42.60 was the first project.
So we're a little better than our worst case guess, not as good as we'd like, but as far as mileage, I think we're probably looking around the 35 or so right now. We still, have another half of the projects to do, so we'll see how the bids shake out.
Okay. I move that we approve the resolution finalizing the specifications for the MAPS 3 Phase 1, Project 2 sidewalk improvements authorization in the city to advertise for bids to receive in July project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt the resolution approving the plans shown in item 5. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The recommendation is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us into item 7. David, do you have any items to be brought up under item 7 on the agenda?
No, sir, we do not.
Then let's move to item 8. That's the subcommittee reports. We've heard from a number of subcommittees. Nathaniel, you want to give us a briefing on what a
big
great
day
day you
yesterday?
had?
Sure. We, streetcar subcommittee, we received the 4 proposed routes from our consultants. Obviously, it contemplated the years of work, not only from our subcommittee, but from public meetings and the alternatives analysis. So the 4 routes, our concept one from last year didn't quite make the cut, but that's okay, Zane and I will recover. Because they all connected the major nodes that we wanted to. They all connected Bricktown, CBD, Midtown, either touched or penetrated the park area, the convention center area. So I think that was actually in the paper, so I think you can actually find that. But essentially, Reno and Sheridan through Bricktown and going up either Broadway, Robinson, Hudson, or Harvey. There's a few different options. And then all of them kind of cut through Midtown. So they were very well received. The subcommittee asked a lot of questions still, and at least my own perception, I could tell that the consultants had really thought through a lot. We couldn't stump them, despite our best efforts. So we got a little bit of homework still to do. Literally, they gave us a homework assignment for next time to nail down the final priorities, because it can't quite penetrate everything, right? We can't quite penetrate all of these kind of major sections of the greater downtown area, but we can get awfully close. And so that's the priorities of the community is, where do we need to touch and where do we actually need to, cut through as far as the major nodes. Some of the major action items left for the rest of the summer and before we, have the final route to recommend, some of the economic development land use data, fine-tuning ridership forecasts, looking at point-to-point routes, where people are most likely to get on and where would they go from that embarkation point. And then, of course, the Adventure District line, looking forward to future projects. So, like I said, it's well received. We had a very good attendance, a lot of public there. And I think with just a couple of tweaks and some mixing and matching the proposals, we'll have a final recommendation in the next meeting or two that we can then move on to this body and then the City Council. Zane, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Just to add, there's a workshop that we're participating in this afternoon. It's a follow-on to the first Fresh Eyes workshop to look at these 4 proposals a little closer with some of the community leaders or business participants, business leaders.
Then July 15, July 15 is a public meeting at the library. I think it's 5:30 to 7:30. Is that right, David?
I believe it's at 6. Is that right, Nicole? Open house, yeah, there's an open house which the people are able to come and look at boards and look at the routes and things starting at 5:30, but the meeting itself starts at 6.
And it'll show the 4 routes still at the July 15?
It will.
Okay, any other subcommittee? Mike?
Tom, I would like to, the mayor has invited subcommittee members to join him. I think someone may have mentioned this. To join the mayor in, we're going to go visit a senior health and wellness center in Little Rock in a couple of weeks. And, I'm excited about that and glad to see that the mayor's that interested.
Yeah, that's July the 9th.
Yes, I think it is the 9th.
Okay. All right.
Trails.
Yes.
We have a couple of map updates for the committee on trails. David, did you want to talk to us about these? We've done some acquisition of land.
I can. Damon, can you pull up the trails? Under your informational items, the first one is trail that goes from MacArthur out to Council Road, and you can see the progress we've got with the land on this. We have 2 in litigation. Offers have been made on everything, so we're moving. This one is a little behind the other one. Danny, if you could move on to the next one. The next one is the trail between Council that goes up to Lake Overholser, and you can see that we've made substantial progress on this, and as soon as we're able to acquire these properties, we'll put the plans out to bid. The plans are about 99% complete, and you'll see those next month coming through subcommittee and board for approval. On this one, we just have the one that's in litigation right now.
And they're not dependent on each other? So once one property is completely acquired, we can go forward with that one?
Okay.
So that's good news for us. And be looking soon to hear a press release on first sidewalks being poured.
That's great, Sue. Okay, any other subcommittees? All right, then let's go to, I know you've already started on the informational items. David, you want to point out any of those in particular you want us to...
Right, we have one more, Dan, if you could pull up the acquisition on the Whitewater is proceeding. We're a ways from getting that land acquired. You can see that there's contracts made, and some have already gone to litigation, and then there's several in blue that we still need to complete acquisition on. You'll see that within the informational item, there's several real estate purchase agreements that are listed in your packet, and these are for trails and the Whitewater that we've just discussed. So I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any particular one of those informational items anyone wants to discuss?
We also, Mr. Chairman, we also have a park map listed here. Danny, do you have the park? Okay, we don't have that today. It essentially looks the same as we had last month. We control 94, 95, 96% of the land there. We have some...
That's in the upper park.
That's right. Yes, thanks for correcting me on that. That's on the upper park. We have an ODOT ramp that we're still dealing with.
Okay. All right. Any questions about any of those informational items? Well, David, let's move on to item 10 then. Anything additional you want to tell us about as an update?
I'll give you a few items here, Mr. Chairman. As we mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, the racecourse lighting is complete, and there will be a lighting ceremony this Saturday at 8:45. The windscreen is also in design, and the Whitewater facility that we are all anxious to see is in design, and we saw the preliminary report on Phase 2 improvements here this morning. Senior wellness, we had a good discussion here this morning, and that process continues. Trails and sidewalks, the Phase 1 projects have begun. They've been issued a work order, and as Ms. Hooper said, there'll be a press release here soon about the actual beginning of construction very soon. And as we just saw, 2 sections of the river trails are in design, and right-of-way acquisition continues. On the convention center, the conceptual design continues on that project. Fairgrounds, the Phase 1 grading is complete. The Phase 1 parking improvements are now under construction, and the Expo Center design continues. On the streetcar, it was mentioned that we went over the alignment this month, so that process continues, and the analysis on the Adventure Line continues, and the public meeting on the 15th was also mentioned that we'd like to encourage everybody to attend if they can. And as far as the park, the master plan continues on that. So we're getting real close to bringing you the master plan for the downtown park. So we're very busy.
Exciting. Any questions for David? Okay. Item 11, any members of the board have any comments they want to make? Staff? Amanda, are we okay? Okay. All right. Any citizens here that would like to be heard? Well, then I think that concludes our business. Would someone like to move adjournment? It's been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thanks for coming.